leader must have a vision. Without a vision, you will not be a leader. Leader must be able to travel into an unexplored path. Leader must know how to manage success, most importantly the failure.
Here's what stops the average person from being a leader, is the fear of the consequences of leading. Most people don't want the responsibility of being a leader. Sometimes you just really want to be the leader of your own life.
Leadership is the awesome responsibility to see those around us rise.
When your journey seems too hard, and when you run into a chorus of cynics who tell you that you're being foolish to keep believing, or that you can't do something, or that you should just give up, or you should just settle, you might say to yourself a little phrase that I've found handy these last 8 years. Yes, we can.
We all are humans, and we don't have answers to every damn question. There has to be a common purpose. There has to be a shared vision. There has to be a common goal.
How do you choose the right people for the right job?
That's what is important for the organization.
We would like to know that magic approach.
We are not just human doings. We are human beings.
That's nice wording. Hello everyone, welcome back to another episode of nlsa podcast. Today is a huge day for the channel. We got a true titan joining us from the industry. He's been leading the industry from last 2 decades, building empires as well as inspiring countless people. He knows all about having entrepreneurial mindset and dealing with the challenges of the global market. Today, he is here to talk about the insight on leadership, strategic thinking, and having an entrepreneurial mindset. Let's welcome none other than Gagan Sachdeva. Welcome to Never Late Show with Anuvindh, aka nlsa podcast. We would like to have an introduction about yourself. Maybe you can take us through your leadership journey.
Well, Anu, I came to New Zealand in 2006. Once we landed, there were lots of sequence of events that happened before that. But I'll just try and summarize some of the key snippets which really helped me in becoming a person who I am today. Before we landed, I wanted to get a sense of what I am going into, to get a feel of the place, to get a feel of, how does the world of work look like in New Zealand, and how will it be different from what I had experienced for the first half of my life in back in India. So we started understanding the different industries. We started gaining some understanding of the employers, what they were looking for. And we started applying for jobs from there on. And between me and my wife, I think we would have done at least 500 to 600 applications. My full-time job after my full day's work was to just apply. And by the time it was morning, we would just wait for the rejections to come through. But out of those 500 applications, what we got was about 3 appointments with recruitment consultants. Now, those appointments did not eventuate into any opportunity. But what it did was it helped us really organize and created some kind of a hope and optimism that where we were going, we have something to look forward to. So automatically, there was a habit that was forming. And by looking at something that we needed to do after landing on this day, that we have to go here and go there and all of these places, how will we reach there? What will be the mechanics of it? So you try and figure out a roadmap. So essentially what we had done was 3 kind of milestones. And then we said, okay, fine, how are we going to do that? What will happen to our daughter? Who will look after her while one of us is away? What will be the bus routes? What will be the mode of transport? How expensive are going to be our taxis? So all of that research went into before we even landed here.
Wow. Okay.
And that level of preparation, I think, comes very handy because it does help you develop an approach in life. And that's where I think that segues into how you approach your daily life is also, linked to the strategy, because strategy is nothing but an approach to your environment. And when the environment changes, your approach needs to change. And I think that requires adaptability, that requires agility, that requires hope, optimism, looking forward to something. And I think that's what played a significant role in. So initial days were very, very hard. It was hard to get through people. It was hard to get appointments. Everybody would ask the same chicken and egg story, which we have all experienced as immigrants over here, that you don't have a Kiwi experience. So, okay, sir, how will I gain the Kiwi experience? I will need a start. So, so we did have all of that. But anyway, eventually, I met with my current boss through a common acquaintance, and since I was as a student back in the country, I was very fond of teaching. I come from a teaching family. My father was a teacher, and so it had a lot of impact on me growing up. And I used to take tuitions and other things of people. So I came here. He offered me a teacher's role at Future Skills Academy, and that's where I started.
You've been in the leadership role for like almost a decade now, right? What's really leadership meant for you?
I think for me, leadership is about service. So that servitude to your people around you. Of course, there has to be a common purpose. There has to be a shared vision. There has to be a common goal that we are all trying to achieve. But as a leader, I always feel that the mindset of service, that I'm here to help and enable my team, because that's what is important for the organization. So I think that service attitude in me has always helped me in becoming who I am today. Because we all are humans, and we don't have answers to every damn question. And it is not okay to sit with a question that you don't know an answer about. And it is okay, absolutely okay, whether you're a leader or you have a team member, to sit comfortably with the fact that you will not have all the answers in the world for everything. So I think what changed was that as a leader, when I started, I thought that I needed to know everything. And then it shifted to, no, it is absolutely fine to accept that I don't know this, but asking some other team member that, hey, can you help me understand this better? And then I took that philosophy back to another level by saying that, okay, what can I do to help you achieve what we are trying to achieve? How can I make you feel better about what you're doing? Because the doing gets done irrespective. But how it gets done depends on how the person feels about how they... So for me, that service attitude, people sit at the core of any leadership. It is about people, for people, and in the service of people.
You mean like make sure you're helping them and guiding them, showing like being a beacon for them, showing their path. Is that I can say it in a simple way?
Absolutely.
Okay.
And creating a safe environment by also accepting the fact that I don't know this.
Yeah, understood.
That there is no harm in going back to your team, that, hey, we are facing this difficulty as an organization, as a team, and that I don't have the answer. What should we do? How should we approach it?
What are the best practices or your way of helping team to be innovative?
Well, I think first of all, the best innovation comes from courage and a place of fearlessness. Because quite a lot of the times, it's not that we lack innovation. I think there is a lot of creativity in the organizations and the people. I think we have some of the best brains, who have all the technology, all the reach to find any answer to the questions that we are trying to solve. But what is different is that people come from a place of fear. They are unwilling to take the risk. And why is that? Why is that? It's because there is a particular cultural habit in the organization that needs to be broken. That if I do something, if I take a risk, and if I don't go well, and if I face failure, then what will I do? That thought in itself is very psychologically unsafe for people.
Yeah.
So I think as a leader, it's very important, as a manager, as a leader, as a team leader, as at every level, we have to make sure that we create an emotionally safe environment for people to take reasonable risks within the scope of the activity of the organization and which is aligned with the purpose and mission of the organization. And when you give that assurance to your people that it is okay to make mistakes, it is okay to deal with failure, and the success will certainly come. That's the key to innovation.
When you say that, it's more about believing in yourself and taking risk and accepting the failure and learn from it.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So reflection is a huge part. Not making the same mistakes again and again and again is another part. And then, of course, not only learning from that mistake as a particular person within the organization, but also making it an institutional learning so that it becomes embedded into the thinking of the organization, irrespective of whether that person is here tomorrow or not. The learning must remain.
Every time there is a plan, there is an implementation happening, there are more and more people maybe coming in, going off from the company, or, there is always change happening rapidly, right? How do you see this change when a staff is, or when a person is moving to a new role or moving to a different place? How do you, have that seamless transition?
If we see the entire organization as a big system, an ecosystem in which all of us are operating and are solving problems, are achieving objectives, are working towards the goals of the company or our teams, then there is a system. That's an ecosystem. If we understand the interconnectedness of all these parts, that what I'm doing influences others, that's where the crux of the knowledge is. So you can definitely link up the processes for a particular person, but how that particular person's process is linked to the others in the organization is something that gets lost. So how do you then make it a cultural habit of the organization so that it is retained?
Okay.
Because processes can be documented, but the way of doing things is still different. There is so much more to the narrative when you sit with the people beyond the process documents.
Oh, yeah.
Right? So I think what happens is that when you have a systemic approach towards whatever business activity that you are undertaking within the organization, and if you are trying to map it through a properly designed infrastructure, and nowadays we have lots and lots of those tools. We have ERP systems, we have CRMs, we have all of those things. So at least those behaviors can be converted into cultural practices of the organization. Those practices can be turned into processes, and those processes can become then the part of who the organization is and what they stand.
The foundation for.
Yeah, cool. So, and which is what we call, for example, in my context, when we came to the campus, we called it AIC Way. And AIC Way was essentially a 360-degree response to the changing needs of our learners and our stakeholders. How will we look at those changing needs, ever-changing needs, from a 360-degree view?
All right.
Which means that each and every person in the organization from top to bottom had to be engaged in the process. We needed to understand what are the different touch points and how those touch points actually interact with each other.
Whenever you come to a leadership role, how do you plan your 30, 60, 90 days?
I know I have a very different approach to this.
Okay. We would like to know that magic approach.
Well, it's not a magic approach, because I think what we do is as humans, we don't think in boxes, right? So what I have tried to institute in the thinking of this organization, at least, is for people to think through what are the important things that they would like to achieve first. So what we do is we collectively, for each of the teams, we compile lists of all of our priority actions that we want to undertake for a particular year. All of and it's actually a brainstorm within the teams that happens, and they come up with the priority actions. And then what we do is we try and collate all of these priority actions and link them back to the goals of the organization.
Okay.
And then we have a debate around, what's in sync with the goal and what's out of sync. And then we give those feedback to the teams. They readjust it, right? So the executive teams has their own priority actions. The teams develop their own priority actions. And then we try and marry these two and compile them, and then link it back to the strategic goals and vision and mission of the organization. And once that exercise is done, once we have concluded, then we sit on those priority lists and say, this is what we are going to achieve in 30 days, this in 60 days, or this in 1 year. So that's how it follows.
Okay.
But it's a very collaborative approach. It's everyone in the organization has a say in it. And so rather than doing the other way around, that these are my strategic goals, let's do, thinking around actions and objectives around within these goals. And that's what puts people into boxes. And that's the systems thinking that I'm talking about, that doesn't allow for the interconnectedness to happen. Whereas when people are doing free mind thinking on their action and what they want to achieve, they are not restricted by those boxes.
Throughout this year, right, the leadership might have evolved in a different, you've been leader for, as I mentioned, like the initial days, you had a different approach now, right? How did it really evolve, your leadership approach?
I think it is about learning to listen to really understand, absorb, and immerse in what is happening around you. I think a lot of the times what I also used to do was I used to listen to speak. So before I would listen, I would have the tendency to also prepare my response in my head.
Okay.
But now I'm comfortable with sitting with listening, trying to hear and process it before I respond. So that's been an approach. Second, I think accepting myself for who I am and what my strengths are and what I bring to the table, and that I don't have all the answers in the world to give to my team members is another big shift in my thinking over the last decade or so. And now I don't mind sitting with my team and saying, hey guys, I have no idea how we are going to solve this.
Okay.
So I think sitting with that vulnerability, sitting with that fearlessness of not knowing everything, and then ensuring that I encourage an environment of and an emotionally safe space for people to say and be able to be themselves so that they can perform better. I think that's my job. So as a manager, while I'm interested in what you're doing in your roles, I'm equally interested, as I said before, in how you feel about what you're doing. Because if I take care of how you feel, the doing will get done. The problem is that in the organizations, we are not just human doings, we are human beings.
That's nice wording. Can you give us a time that you have to take a hard strategic decision, and how did you approach it?
Well, I think a few years back we had a downturn in business, and I think for me, I think people sit at the core of my heart, and I kind of, my leadership style is very heart driven, and so I listen to my heart first before I do my brain. And I think the most difficult decision was that we were going to evaluate whether, if we were to sustain as an organization and for the better good of the organization, we have to reduce the staff size. And I think that has been one of the toughest periods that I've dealt with. And I think those are the difficult decisions always for me, that when the organization shrinks and you have to let go of some of the team members, who I consider as family, and part ways, that's difficult.
How did you approach it?
I think with humanity.
Like from your heart?
We are humans at the end of the day. the processes, the consultation has to be authentic. We've had cases like in that particular period, we received, I don't know, maybe about 50, 60 pages worth of feedback. And I went through line by line each and every word that the team had written. And I responded to each and every feedback with a written response because I felt the need that people needed to know what was happening. And I have also listened to the feedback, heard the feedback, and also gone back on some of the changes that we, because the team did not agree with it. And I decided to go ahead with what the team wanted. So I think being human, being authentic, doing the process, not just for the sake of process, I think that's quite key.
As a leader, I believe as you said, you don't have to learn everything, but you might need to know some kind of overview required in every department, I believe. So why am I mentioning it? Like, as a T-shaped leader is more trending now. So yeah, it's different approach, but everyone mentions that. But just curious to know, what do you define a T-shaped leader? How do you define a T-shaped leader? And is it really important to be a T-shaped leader?
Well, I think all of us are different individuals, Anu, at the end of the day. And I think how I understand the T-shaped leadership is that somebody who is an expert in a particular area makes the effort to find the interconnectedness with the other parts of the organization, right? And share their expertise with others. That's what T-shape is, isn't it? So you are, while you are a domain expert, you're also sharing your expertise across because you have a deep inquisitiveness to understand how the whole thing relates to each other. So for me, I think it comes very naturally because I think inquisitiveness is key to humanity and innovation. So if you're asking the right questions, you may not be the expert, but if you know your line of inquiry and if you are making the right inquiries, and if you are genuinely and authentically wanting to find answers with your teams, not with the view of threatening them or showing them that no, they don't know enough, but with a genuine effort of collectively going on a hunt for finding the answers, then that's what T leadership for me is.
How do you choose the right people for the right job?
Well, I think that choice has to happen when you're recruiting the people, right? So if, for example, if I'm very clear on where I want to be, what's my destination, then that breaks down into who are the resources, what are the skill sets that are complementary in the organization that are required to reach those goals. And then, of course, the whole choice and the hunt begins with that. But my way of approaching it also slightly influenced by the fact that I innately believe in human potential and human as a whole.
Human as a whole.
As a whole person. That they will come with perfections and imperfections both, right? So yes, if there is a technical job, if I have to have a cloud engineer, I cannot compromise on the cloud skills.
Yeah.
Right? But if I know that the cloud engineer has certain, difficulties with communicating with other people or relating with other team members, then it is my job to make sure that if he is the best man for the job, to make sure that he gets all the support in that area so that he can excel, right? So, and I think that has always been my approach. So I pick up the people. I have done lots of things with people who were not domain experts. We picked up freshers. I have worked with a lot of people who just came from left field, and we have done projects successfully. I've had instances where people did not have the domain expertise, and I brought in a domain expertise only as a contractor to help us, and the rest of the stuff being taken by the people. So you see, so there are different ways of approaching these things because you will not get all the answers through one individuals. And especially when in small and medium enterprises in New Zealand, you need people with multiple skills, but you can't have really experts in everything. So I think once you accept that fact that people will come with some shortcomings, then I think the only thing you are asking is having a very honest conversation with them and saying, I'm very interested in your success. What will help us become more successful? Is that too difficult a question to ask? I think the problem is that we don't ask these questions.
Okay.
We are not comfortable sitting with people and say, hey guys, we are not achieving the results. How can we do things better?
Yeah.
Right? It's a simple conversation to have. Like, how would you approach it in a family situation? You have a difficulty with one child who is not succeeding their exams, in their school. What would you do? You would sit as a family.
True.
You would say, okay, what kind of support do you need? Do you need tuitions? Do you need extra support? Is there some more time that we can schedule so that I can help you? It's about being human. Organizations are nothing but a collective of human beings who are trying to do certain things and achieve certain objectives. So I think it is just going back to the basics of being human, and everything else can ride on that humanity very well.
Yeah, true. This, as the world is shifting, there are a lot of changes happening at the moment, right? When I say changes, one side there is recession happening, one side there are a lot of job cuts happening. People are struggling to, get at least a entry-level role, and even experts who had been in the industry for so many times is struggling to get a, role because of this current situation. Because of this economic shift happening, what advice you can give to someone to start a business?
Just do it.
Just do it. Any tips that you can give to them, like,
Well, I think
because there is a fear always, right?
one has to make sure that one is looking after themselves as well. Because if you're not in a comfortable space, you can never perform better. So again, making sure that you're feeling right so that you can do right. So feeling drives the doing, isn't it?
Yeah.
Most of the time, when you don't feel like doing something in a particular day, and somebody asks, whoa, what's happening? Oh, and I'm not feeling up to it. So you see, so feeling drives the doing. So a lot of the times, again, it is about getting rid of the fear. And if, as human beings who are surrounding, we may have mates, we have friends, we have families, members who are always wanting to do something else in life, and they are not satisfied with something. All we have to do is just let's see how that situation looks like. What are your barriers? What can we do to remove the barriers? And just slowly working towards it and taking a little bit of risk.
Yeah, understood. Can I say like this? Believe in yourself. Don't afraid to take risk. Process and plan whatever you are going to execute. Reach out to people.
Said it all.
Yeah.
And ask for help.
Yeah.
Don't be shy. Because most of the time we think we have it in our head that, if I ask for help, I'll be seen as a weak person.
Yeah.
Whatever. But you will be surprised, Anu, that if I say that I need help, 9 out of 10 people, in fact, I have met always 10 out of 10 people who will always come back to me and say, how can I help you?
Oh, yeah. That's very true. If you don't know, you don't know. You have to seek help to get an understanding about it.
Exactly. And if you haven't said that, hey, I need help, how will the other person know that you need help?
That's true.
So I think simple things in life.
How do you foresee New Zealand education or New Zealand education industry? What innovation is about to happen in New Zealand education?
I think the challenges that the education, not just in New Zealand but everywhere, what we are facing is an incredibly changing landscape. Technology is changing very fast, and technology is actually seeping into every aspect of our life. So that's one challenge. Second is the cost of studies. I think people are finding it incredibly hard to afford good education. And then is the convenience factors, right? So, for example, can I study anywhere, anytime, as per my own convenience and the subjects that I want to learn? So those are the challenges. And I think fourth would be, of course, something that is linked to the career of choice. And career obviously is ever changing, because on an average now, I think some research says that, we will have 7 or 8 careers over a lifetime.
No.
Now, that requires lifelong learning. So, these are quite a lot of, things to cope up because it's changing so fast. So how do you ensure that your classrooms are close to what is happening in the real world? That how do we prepare our learners and our graduates to actually be better contributors in the society? I think that will remain as our challenge.
Okay, you mean like foreseeing the future and work towards it and build a curriculum or structure that helps to attain knowledge, whatever required for the future.
Absolutely. And it's interdisciplinary. So, all sorts of, different components of different domains are intersecting with each other. So while one needs to have some level of, there are fields where you need technical skills, there are fields where you need human skills. But I think how we understand what skills are required, how we anticipate how the future will look like and those skills will change. I think that understanding of that is quite important, quite key. Especially now, for example, AI, it's everywhere. And it's going to impact the jobs. It's going to impact how we study, how we learn, because quite a lot of the things that people are expected to do, they would want AI to do it, right? So the students are at a different level. And obviously, our classrooms have to meet those levels as well.
Okay. As you mentioned AI, I just want to know what are the skills or knowledge required for the future generation to succeed?
Well, I think some of the things will remain very basic and core beyond the technical. So I'm assuming that people have the technical skills that they need, and they need to now go to the next stage on developing their careers. So the first and foremost would be, learning to learn, being open to learning all the time, anytime, whichever age. And I think that openness is required nowadays. So that skill is quite important. Learning to collaborate, being a collaborative contributor, is quite key as a skill. So I think those are the two most important things that I would say. Everything else, really, doesn't really matter.
Okay. Apart from AI, what other skills do you think the future is looking for?
Well, I think again, I think the ability to work in teams is quite important. Having an understanding of how technologies intersect with what we are doing and how we are doing things. I think that understanding is quite an important thing. And also being inquisitive about what is happening around us, and not just right now, but also constantly seeking out, how will this be done differently in the next 2 years? I think that's quite key. And I'll give you an example. For example, the way we used to bank 10 years back, even 10 years back, is changed completely. The way we used to pay, at the F-pause is also changing, right? So one needs to continuously adapt. And let's say if one is working in a technology field, they will need to constantly upgrade because, things are just changing very, very quickly. And, you have one iOS platform which makes some changes, and then it has ripple impact on a whole lot of developer community, which has to make that change, corresponding change accordingly, and they have to upskill themselves. So that openness to learning always has to be there.
Maybe we can jump into a final rapid round question. Simple, short answers. So we'll start from, what's the best advice that you ever received?
Be good and serve others.
What's your favorite book?
It will have to be Fifth Discipline by Peter Senge.
What is it about?
It's about systems thinking, which I read, I think, in my first year of college here.
When you get a chance to sit with a historic figure and have a dinner with, who will be choosing?
It will have to be Mahatma Gandhi.
Why?
Well, I think I admire the person because he talked about non-violence. And non-violence not only in action. By non-violence, he did not mean, picking up the gun kind of violence. But non-violence means having noble thoughts, having non-violent thoughts, not speaking or saying something which is violent or aggressive, or something that will hurt any other community. I mean, that itself, that thought and living that life and living those values in the times of World War, in the times when India was a colonial, was a colony, I think was a huge challenge, and hats off to that person. He stood every storm so strongly and he stood by his values. And I think that takes a lot of courage.
Anything that you have to say to our audience?
Well, let's just be good and do good to each other.
Thank you very much. Thank you, sir. What an incredible conversations with Gagan. His insights on leadership, strategic thinking, and the entrepreneurial mindset were truly enlightening. It's not every day you get to hear from someone from 2 decades of experience leading major organizations. If you truly enjoyed this episode, make sure you hit that like button, subscribe to nlsa podcast, and turn on the notification bell so that you will never miss an update. We have many more guests lined up who are ready to share their journeys and insights with you. If you have any questions or topic you would like us to cover in future episodes, drop them in the comments below or send us a message. Thank you so much for tuning in. This is Anuvindh signing off. Until next time, stay curious, stay inspired, keep pushing the boundaries.